Welcome to 2 Cents Worth. I'm your host, Ryan DeFaber. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. Today, on episode 72, we are going to be talking about friends. And the evolution of friends and friendship and what I like to call one-way street friends and, the type of friend that I am and the friends that I have around me. And, different stages of life and how they present different friends and friendship and all of those things. Friends becoming acquaintances, really, where, you had a good friendship and, as you progress in life, they progress in life. Sometimes that turns into an acquaintance rather than a friend. And my definition of a friend. So let's start with that. Let's start with the definition of a friend. A definition of a friend to me is someone that gives as much of the friendship back as you give into the friendship, right? I'm a very loyal friend. I'm a very welcoming friend. And when I'm a friend of somebody, I give a lot to that relationship, and I don't ever expect that fully in return, but I expect to be there a reciprocation of the amount of effort that I give into a friendship. So to me, a definition of a friend is somebody that's willing to give as much to the relationship, maybe not as much as you do, but almost an equal part to that friendship, right? It can't be just you're the person that constantly is reaching out, inviting them to do things, asking to do things with them, and then there's nothing in return, right? There's never a return call or text or anything like that. The other thing I would call a definition of a friend is if that person calls you at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you know that they need something, you're willing to answer that phone call, right? If you pick up the phone and you see that someone's calling you and you're not willing to answer it no matter what time of night it is, honestly, I don't know if that person is a friend. That maybe that person's an acquaintance, and you're sitting there going, you look at that call and you go, what the hell does this person want now? Like, if they really needed something, they would have given to the relationship prior to that time, right? So that's my definition of a friend. Long definition, but that's what it is. Basically, someone that's willing to give to the relationship, friendship, as you are, back to them, right? And so the evolution of friends is a very interesting thing and something that I've been going through in my life over the last, I turn 38 next week, really 38 years of your life, right? You have these friends in school, in high school, in college, after college. If you have kids, you gain friends usually a lot of times either from your kids' school because of the friends that they have, or the sports that they might play, or any type of extracurricular activity that they're involved in, right? And then you have friends that become friends through, where you live. And so you constantly are going through an evolution of friendship. But I don't think you realize it or you analyze it as much until you get a little older and you see it happening in front of you, right? I don't think too much about, and I didn't think too much about this, up until recently, really, where I saw friends that were very close to me because of where we are in life kindly slowly fade into more of acquaintances. And if you hear from them, it's nice to hear from them, but you're never really expecting to hear from them, You're never expecting to get an invite from them to go out and do something. Because, you see that they are, hanging out with their friends, now their friends, right? And people that have, lived more of the life that they live. So you see that evolution. Never really looked at it up until, again, like I said, recently. You don't think about it when you're going through elementary school. You have friends, then all of a sudden you go into middle school, and some of your friends from elementary school might not go to your middle school, or different people from different elementary schools go to your middle school and you become friends with them, and then you go to high school and the same thing, and people are moving and changing and going to different schools, whether it's public, private, all those things, people moving in, you might move to a different neighborhood, all those things, you might play a different sport, right? So we're kind of going through that transition as well with our two kids. For the last couple of years, it's been baseball, fall, and spring. Well, this fall we're going to play soccer. We're not going to play baseball. So, my kids, I fully expect to be friendly with people on the team. So we're going to meet new parents. Will those new parents become friends? You don't know, right? You don't know what that's going to lead into. I know that we've gained friends from our boys playing baseball that weren't friends with us, prior, because we don't live in the same neighborhood. They don't go to the same school. So you gain friends that way. You change because you're living the same type of lifestyle, right? We're both playing baseball. They're on the same baseball teams. You become friends because you have similar interests, all those types of things. So you have that constant evolution throughout your life of friends. I still have friends from high school. Two of my closest friends are from high school. And it's because, again, one, we've kept in touch, obviously. We have always had similar interests. We've always had similar types of, I would say, personalities and humor and, all things that kind of go into somebody you want to hang out with, right? I don't want to hang out with somebody that, I go and sit and have a couple beers with, and it's like talking to the wall because there's nothing in return. That's not exciting for me. I want to be able to go and have, a friendship and a conversation with someone that's willing to return that same type of whatever it is. Might be banter, humor, just conversation, right? That's what you want. So, I've kept two very close friendships from high school. I've had other high school friends that we had very close relationships up until the last couple of years. Now, for whatever reason, things have changed, whether it's where we're at in life, where we're at, professionally, where we're at, where we might even live. Might be the same city, but when, you're involved in constant things, like my weekends are usually taken up by a lot of the stuff that the kids do. So, the last thing that I'm able to do, or I don't want to say able to do, one of the last things that I want to do is, or have the ability to do, let's say that I have the ability to do, because say I get invited to go out. Okay, great. Well, obviously Lindsay can be here, or vice versa. Lindsay gets invited to go out and I can be here and watch the kids. But does it make sense to constantly get a sitter every single night? No. Or every weekend? No. To go and hang out. So, more often than not, it's either we're hanging out close by or we're hanging out with our neighbors who have become our friends and close friends as well. I know that there are a couple of my neighbors that are my friends now that I could call at 2 o'clock in the morning. They'd answer the call. I know that for a fact. But, there's a couple of high school friends that we were very close. And up until recently, probably the last couple in particular, last couple years have just kind of faded and become more of acquaintances, to where, you see them in passing, or, you see them here or there. If you get invited to, a same party or get together or whatever, or go and play golf together and they were invited as well. But it's just interesting how that evolves, right? And then there are some of my college friends that I'm very close with. And we've stayed in contact and all that stuff because, again, we live similar life. We have similar lifestyles, right? With kids, they take up so much time, and it's great because they're involved in so many things and you want them to be involved and all that. And you're able to understand that schedule, right? The one thing that I think frustrates me from a friendship perspective, and I mentioned it when I started about being loyal, is I hate that when people use that kind of as an excuse on why you don't get invited places. Well, I would have invited you, but I figured you had something for the kids this weekend. It's like, well, I still would have appreciated an invite, even if I have to tell you no. And I know you hate hearing no, because after you hear no multiple times, you eventually shut it off. I'm the same way, right? And I think that goes back to that, what I was talking about earlier, where it's a one-way street friendship, where you're giving all, you're constantly inviting them out, you're doing this, you're doing that, and they're saying no, 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 no. Eventually, you're just like, you know what? If they want to hang out, they'll reach out to me, because I'm not going to reach out to them anymore. But I think sometimes we give up too early on that to where it's like, well, I just assumed you had kid stuff. Well, I don't, but I appreciate that the fact that you thought that, but at the same time, I would have loved an invite. You get to that point too where it can be a little bit frustrating because it's like, well, you gave up on me. I mean, what if I don't have something for the kids? I can make that time to go and play golf or whatnot. So you have that evolution. It's a very interesting evolution. Sometimes it can be, I'd say sometimes it can be painful to be like, just to think like maybe it was even a couple months ago. A couple months ago, I was friends with this person. Now it's like, man, it's just faded that quickly to where it's like, man, it's more of an acquaintance. And that's okay. Obviously, as we move on in our lives and all that stuff, you're going to have friends that are going to come and go. You're going to have friends that are going to come back into your life that, we're living that same type of thing where I was mentioning before, where it was like, you get to a point, and I've had this before, especially with two of my friends, two of actually my closest friends, to where I got to a point to where I was like, I was tired of hearing no every time I invited them somewhere. And it was at that point to where it was like, you know what? If they're willing to be a friend back to me, then it's got to be a two-way street. And until it's a two-way street, I'm kind of done. So I'm going to wait for them to reach out. And in one particular instance, actually both instances, it was probably a good year and a half in both instances, to where it was then the reciprocation started coming back. Hey, what are you up to? What are you up to? And it's like, wow, okay. I think you might have recognized as well as I did that this was a one-way relationship, and that's friendship. And, you want to put the work back into the friendship as you saw that I was doing. And yes, we went our separate ways for a little bit, but that's okay. And we, in both instances, talked it out, and there was no hard feelings about it. It was more of like, hey, let's not let that happen again, because you're a friend that I've had for a long time. You're a friend that I've had for a long time. Here's where I was at and why I stopped sending out invites and things like that, and just talked about it. And then their response too of like, yeah, no, I understood that. And I got to a point where I was like, wow, like, Ryan's not reaching out to me anymore. I'm not getting invited to do things anymore. I need to maybe put a little bit back into this relationship and friendship. And so I've had that as well. But again, just an evolution of that is where it's like, I'm guilty of it to where, I've stopped sending things out to people. But it's just a very interesting thing. Again, as I said, I'm a very loyal friend. The last thing I want is it to be a one-way street relationship, friendship. That gets very frustrating because I don't have the time and maybe patience to constantly be reaching out to a person that you never get anything in return from, right? When you reach out to a person constantly through text message or any other means of communication, right? And you don't receive that back. And then when you actually see those, the thing that drives me crazy, and this goes to this, but the one thing that drives me absolutely nuts is when you do that, you don't hear from those people, and then when you actually see them or around them and they're on their phone constantly, and it's like, I know you got my text message. I know you got my phone call. You're constantly on your phone. Why would you not return that text message or phone call? Am I that much of a burden to you as a friend that you just don't want to respond to me? If that's the case, then I'm good. Let's disconnect, right? I'm not going to give any more into that. And I've had that over the last couple years, and I've basically kind of just done what I've needed to do is, kind of just move on and say, hey, while we were friends, it was fun. It was great. We had a good friendship. You've moved on, and that's okay. And, I guess, I'm going to have to go ahead and move on from that as well, because it's turned into a one-way relationship, friendship type thing. So, it's a very interesting thing to see and witness and go through, but obviously it's necessary in life, and you want to be around the people that are your friends and are willing to give back to your friendship and give what you put into it. And I think those are the people you want around them. Here's the thing too. They don't have to have all the same likes and views and things like that as you do. I don't think that's necessary at all. I think a lot of times we gravitate towards people that share all of our same views and all of our same thoughts because it's just an easy conversation. I don't that shouldn't be the case. You should surround yourself with people with that you can enjoy being around, have conversation with, laugh with, have, meaningful conversations that might not see the world the same way you do. If I did that, that'd be pretty boring being around the same type of people over and over and over again that all agree with me on a constant basis. Now, that sounds great. It sounds you like nirvana, right? Like, oh, I'd be around everyone that has the same view as me, but then you shut yourself off from so many different things. So it's good to have a diverse group of friendships and diverse thoughts and those things. I think that makes you a better, well-rounded person because it gives you a little empathy. It gives you a different perspective on life. What are they thinking? How do they view things? Because we all don't view things the same way. So I've looked at that as well. And I was telling Lindsay when I was going to do this podcast, she was like, oh, very philosophical. And I don't think it is. It's just more of like, hey, like I've noticed it more because maybe I'm paying more attention to, when I hear from people, do I hear from people, how we used to interact and how things have just changed. And I don't have the time to put in as much effort as I used to in certain relationships, friendships that I once did. And I don't really want to anymore because I never was getting anything in return. And it's frustrating and sometimes it's hurtful because you're like, man, I've been friends with this person for 20 years. And they basically were, in a couple of situations, they basically were like, yeah, but we're doing different things in our lives. And it's like, I still like to go and hang out. I still like to drink beer. Yeah, I have kids and I'm married and we might live in a different part of town, but doesn't mean I don't want to hang out with you. I thought we were still friends. And they were the ones that kind of shut it off. And it's like, okay, wow, all right. Well, then I need to be able to swallow that and shut it off as well. And I'll see you around. If you invite me to do something, once or twice a year, cool. Maybe I'll join, maybe I won't. Just depends on, where I'm at. And am I willing to put myself, in that situation and not be sucked back in, but more of like, oh, well, maybe it's going to be different this time, and maybe it won't be. So I don't think this is philosophical, but it's just more of like what life is, right? I still keep in contact with some people from elementary school that I grew up with. Now, are they friends? I would say that we've had a friendship, and I think social media helps with that as well. There's so many negatives with social media. I think the one positive is that you can still connect with people that you've been friends with for such a long time, growing up as a kid, and you can see where they're at in their life, and they can see where you're at in your life, and then connect here and there. And I've done that with a couple people from growing up. But, moving, if you don't know, I grew up in Rhode Island and moved to North Carolina when I was a sophomore in high school. That didn't help, right? Because those are formidable years of, really bonding with people, building stronger relationships and friendships as you move into college and beyond. But, I've kept in contact with a couple of people, and I think it's great because it brings you kind of back to your childhood and holistically to see like where we were growing up to where we are now as adults. And I think that's pretty cool. That's one nice thing about social media. Again, a lot of negatives about social media, but that's a positive. But, I would say for friendship, think about where you're at with your friends. Think about where you're at with certain relationships and friendships that you have going on. Is it a one-way relationship or is there a give and a take? And I would tell you from experience and from what I've been going through and what we all go through, if it's really just a one-way, it might be time to look at that and say, hey, maybe it's time for me to kind of take a step back. If they're willing to, be a friend, they're going to be the person that will reach out next. I can't always be the person that reaches out. And see, might be a month, might be 2 months, Might be a year and a half like I experienced in two of my friendships. Or it might be never again. And that's okay. And if it's never again, then you know that they were willing to kind of move on before you were. That's my 2 cents worth on friendship. This might be great for you. This advice might be absolutely terrible for you. You might hear this and go, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. I'm totally cool with that. Again, this is my 2 cents worth on friends and friendship, things that I've experienced, things that I've been going through. I hope it's helpful. I hope you have listened and enjoyed. I don't think it was overly philosophical, but hopefully it was informative. And maybe you are relating to it in some type of way. You might not have all the same experiences that I've had in it, but maybe you've had some similar experiences. And that's what I want you to take out of this. That's my 2 cents worth. I'm Ryan DeFaber. Have a great day.